Good evening, everyone. I'm meteorologist Dave Snider with the National Weather Service. It's the 25th of April already. And as always, we encourage you to stay up to date with your local weather information. You can do that easily by calling 1-800-472-0391. Find us online anytime you like at weather.gov/Alaska. And if you want to try something else, use your mobile device. That could be a tablet, that could be your phone, and type in mobile, M-O-B-I-L-E, .weather.gov, and you'll get a web-friendly or mobile-friendly website that if you share that to your desktop or your home screen, whatever you'd like to call that, it will act like a weather app, and it functions for your National Weather Service forecast in a mobile fashion. It's a lot faster that way and works really well. Just make sure you put that on your home screen and set it up with your zip code or type in your city name, and you'll be able to find your forecast pretty easily that way. If you need a little more help with that, let me know. david.snider@noaa.gov is the easy way to find me online. Of course, you can give me a ring here at the office as well. Happy to help you out. And by the way, we'd love to see some pictures from your community and your village. Make sure you send those to us right there at that email, david.snider@noaa.gov. Great way to hear from you, no matter what part of Alaska you're watching from tonight. We are moving very quickly into breakup season. The breakup map is being updated now by the Alaska Pacific River Forecast Center. And the places that they were concerned about, the flood potential issued last week, is really focusing on this red shaded area here where we're going to have above average runoff because of above average snow in this area. And that, again, is from the Seward Peninsula, the Kobuk, Noatak valleys, into the middle Yukon Valley and into the Copper River Basin. For southeast, things are looking below average for snowfall. And the same goes for a lot of the area in south central, so no big concerns there. There are a few places that have low to moderate flood potential in the villages. And you see one of those around Fairbanks. That is actually at the moderate level, and that is simply because the Chino flood control measures may need to be used. And if that's the case, then there could be some groundwater issues around the North Pole area, which is kind of a historical issue that happens when those go into force. So here's the breakup map for this Wednesday, April 25th, and we're going to key on the color changes here. You'll notice that most of the rivers, including the Yukon and the Cusco, are still all white. But if you look upstream a little bit into the Tanana and the Nenana, we're starting to see these blues and even some mostly opens there. And the really cool thing about this map is you can use this at home. So go to the website, weather.gov/APRFC, which is Alaska Pacific River Forecast Center for short, APRFC. And you can zoom in on this map. It's just an interactive map. Click on these, and you'll be able to get the river information there. You can click on the villages and see what the information is for that community, and get the status here, and then save that and come back to it the next day. And you can get daily updates anytime you like, 24 hours a day, and usually this will be up to date by the mid to late afternoon there. So the very latest information will be available for you and your village. And once things start going along the Yukon and of course the Cusco, River Watch will start up. And that is a combined partnership with the State of Alaska's Emergency Operations Center and the Alaska Pacific River Forecast Center, and many of your villages too. And we certainly do appreciate your involvement and your listening and your sharing with that, because we need your information so that we can share it with other communities up and downstream. It takes a village for sure, and we certainly are looking forward to hearing more from yours as we get into the real big River Watch week or so. Hopefully it's an easy one this year. Let's take a look at the satellite picture now as we get into Wednesday. And the map, we're rolling back to about 5 o'clock this morning here. You can see that strong southerly flow moving across the eastern Gulf, really focusing the rainfall across northern parts of southeast, all the way from Yakutat to the northern parts of the Panhandle, southern parts of the Panhandle. That flaming ball of gas that you're seeing there is the sun, and it's okay. Don't mind, a little extra vitamin D dose for you today, no big deal. Looks like you might see a little more of that tomorrow as well. This frontal boundary is just going to kind of linger right about here and slowly fall apart and degrade. Meanwhile, that is not the case out to the west. Low pressure sitting around St. Lawrence Island will sit and spin, it looks like, for the rest of the week, keeping everything across western Alaska very unsettled. Here's a visible satellite picture now, and you can see there are some breaks in the clouds out west, but that is adding to the instability and unrest of the atmosphere here. This is some colder air coming in again across the southern Bering Sea, wrapping in behind that low pressure system. So we're going to focus on snow across the west and keep many across south central in the rain and keep breezes going, at least for the interior. Probably add some rain there as well. Here's today's weather map. The cold front was marching across the eastern Gulf. There's the rain up north, a lot more rain down south offshore for sure. Rain passing through south central, southwest, and across the western interior over Nome and parts of the Kotzebue Sound region as the colder air is pushing eastward. We'll continue to see that next boundary reform out across the west, and that's going to keep unsettled weather across the lowlands of the interior, snowfall across some of the higher terrain, mixed precipitation possible around Anchorage. A lot of that probably just be rain. And south central, we're looking at rain showers there all the way across Bristol Bay and out toward Unalaska, Dutch Harbor, and westward as you get out toward Adak and Atka. As we get into Thursday, that first trough kind of falls apart. You'll see our lingering trough here across the eastern Gulf, still focusing the opportunity for showers across some of the central parts of the Panhandle, especially the north, maybe a few more clouds down south than what you saw today. Showers across south central and the western interior. You'll see some of that breaking up as it moves across the Alaska Range, but don't be surprised to still get some breezes in there. The good news is the really heavy wind that was around yesterday, not only for just south central, but also for the interior, that has eased up a little bit, abated, if you will. So some improvement there. But out west, obviously there's some changes here. Low pressure sitting at 998 millibars. The front sitting across the middle Bering Sea is warmer air now working its way in from the west and southwest parts of the Bering and the North Pacific. This is a good surge of warmth that's moving across the eastern Bering Sea as we get into Thursday, and that's going to crank up rain and snow across the region. And then back to the west, we've got a little bit of a ridge building here and colder air poised and ready to drop southward. It quickly mixes up across this area of low pressure here with another wave moving in behind it. And we're down to 982 millibars by Friday. The southeast will get a little bit of a break. There may be a few showers in there, but by and large, fairly dry as the ridge is pressing into the Gulf. And then we still have unsettled weather well ahead of the next bigger wave across the Bering. For most of south central Kodiak, you're looking at rainfall on Friday. Showers across the interior, rain and snow showers across the Kobuk and Noatak valleys, the Seward Peninsula. North Slope's kind of getting in on the drier weather of this pattern. Generally dry conditions across areas from Barrow to Kaktovik, Prudhoe Bay, and Dead Horse, but out west, obviously, at 982 millibars, that is a low pressure system that you can write home about in April. And a broad westerly flow sweeping across the chain will probably break up some of the clouds, but the big push is going to work its way through the eastern chain and into the Alaska Peninsula by Friday afternoon. That should keep the Yukon and Kuskokwim Delta regions, Bethel, all the way up toward Togiak and Ammonok, northward toward the Norton Sound region and Unalakleet. You're going to see rain and snow showers there, and some of it might even be briefly accumulating snow. Wind's going to be an issue with the steady southerly push, and the ice edge will continue to erode further and further northward. So a lot of changes there on the west coast, and that's really where the brunt of this weather for the rest of the week and into the weekend is going to focus. What about temperatures? For the west, readings will be pretty close to the low to mid 30s there for most communities, about 28 in Nome. Around Kobuk, Noatak, look for temps there, also pretty close to 30 degrees. Teens and 20s for the North Slope. For the middle interior, the middle Tanana Valley, very close to freezing there. South Central, maybe at or just above freezing, 37 in Kodiak, Sandpoint 37. Upper 30s and lower 40s for Southeast. You see Sitka at 41 degrees. Juneau, about 38, 41 around Ketchikan. High temps for your day tomorrow. Could be fairly warm with warm winds coming over the mountains. Upper 40s, certainly possible around Fairbanks, North Pole, out toward Eagle, Northway, Tanana. South Central, lower to mid 40s for you as well. Kenai, mid 40s, Homer and Seward, both fairly mild. Upper 40s or upper 30s around Valdez, 41 in Cordova, 46 for Kodiak. Look at the temps in Southeast, where you get sunshine, Ketchikan, Annette, Craig, Klawock, mid to upper 50s, maybe even 60 degrees. The Alaska Peninsula, though, only in the 40s. St. Paul, about 40 degrees. Nunivak Island, 36, 31 in Nome. Overnight lows on Friday morning. Teens up north, the middle Tanana Valley, just below freezing, just above freezing for South Central and the Kenai Peninsula. Southeast, upper 30s to mid 40s. Southwest, lower 30s, 26 in Nome, and mid 20s for Kotzebue Sound. We end the week on a mild note for the interior, upper 40s to about 50 degrees. Southeast still mild, but not as hot as what we saw on Thursday. South Central in the 40s.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
On to flying weather now. IFR conditions will start us out across the YK Delta there from the Kuskokwim Bay all the way north toward the southern end of the Bering Strait. This is just another wave that's beginning to develop off this area of low pressure here outside of the Gulf of Anadyr in the northern Bering. And as this continues to creep across, we'll see southerly flow strengthen up once again across south central, and we'll keep rainfall and occasional low clouds and poor visibility across parts of southeast. We'll also keep some open areas across the north slope with a better chance of returning the poor visibility and lower ceilings just off the north shore there. For Thursday afternoon, you can see how that western wave is building. Poor visibility and lower ceilings will be developing further southward around the Pribilofs as we get into the afternoon Thursday, and also across Adak in the central chain. You'll see some improvements across the central and southern parts of southeast, but we'll keep a deck of MVFR pushing northward into Prince William Sound and across some of the northern and western sections of the Alaska Range. And IFR conditions will linger across the Kobuk and Noatak valleys. As we get into Friday, you can see how much more that wave is developing out west. And as that continues moving eastward, we'll see IFR return to the Gulf and once again across northern parts of the Lynn Canal all the way down through Sitka, Port Alexander, and further southward all the way up to the Chilkoot and White Range as well. On the north slope, look for increasing areas of IFR north of the Yukon Valley up toward AKwx Pass and Adigan Pass and across the Beaufort Seacoast to Barrow. And then across the YK Delta, this fills in quite a bit with even more IFR for the central and western chain. By Friday afternoon, the real big concentration of IFR will be across the Bering Sea and the southwest coast and the eastern chain. Unalaska, Dutch Harbor, Nikolsky, all the way out toward Atka will be affected with that, as well as Prince William Sound and a few of your favorite passes across the northern Susitna Valley and the western Alaska Range, with some improvements, though, certainly notable around southeast for your Friday afternoon, so you might just get lucky if you wait it out. Here's a look at pass conditions for Thursday then. AKwx and Adigan Pass, we expect to see IFR conditions to start with improvements during the day to VFR. Lake Clark and Merrill Pass, we expect to see leaning over toward MVFR as the day goes on there, so that's good to know. Rainy Pass also looking to start at IFR with some improvements noted throughout the day. Windy Pass will be right there as well. IFR to start for your Thursday. Isabel Pass, marginal conditions through most of the day, so if you can use some of the eastern passes, you'll be a little bit better off. Mentasta Pass right now looking to be VFR through most of your Thursday. Tanita Pass also looking to be pretty good. And Portage Pass, marginal conditions leaning over toward VFR as the day goes on. A lot of that MVFR will pull back out toward the sound as the day continues. And Chilkoot and White Pass expecting to be at least marginal throughout the day at this point. The freezing levels show that warmer air aloft is starting to work its way back over southeast. Levels there stretch anywhere from 2 to as high as 8,000 feet, the 10,000 foot line just south of the Dixon entrance and just south of Hyder right now. Some elevated warming happening across the middle Yukon Valley and up across the north slope. Some of this may actually stretch up over the Brooks Range, so keep that in mind. It could be a little bit warmer than we're showing here. And out across the west, levels around 2 to about 8,000 feet. That is what's bringing in those lower decks and that stratus that we'll see taking over most of the Bering as we get into your Friday afternoon. Icing potential is there. Generally, levels are about 4 to 8,000 feet and above across the north and eastern Gulf Coast, up through the Alaska Range and the upper Tanana Valley and the upper Yukon Valley as well. And above about 2 to 4,000 feet across north and western areas there, you can see how that icing threat does extend a little bit further south toward the eastern chain, though, for your Thursday. So keep that in mind. At least some isolated moderate in many more places, and this will continue to be true through Friday and Saturday. A pretty pronounced trough of low pressure is working its way through the jet stream, about 30,000 feet or so. And you can see that very strong northerly push descending about 105 to 120 knots coming in across the Bering. As high pressure ridges in from the west and southwest, it's allowing this trough to dig further south. So this very pronounced wave is still going to be here, and it's still supporting low pressure just across the northern Bering Sea. This does not move very much over the next several days, so kind of get used to what you see right now. We will have several more waves passing through like what we saw yesterday, and continue to see the effects of today across the interior, and continues to be fairly wet across southeast. A southwest flow will be brought across the Gulf of Alaska. Wind speeds there about 20 to 40 knots all the way out toward the western coast of Alaska. And across the Alaska Peninsula, you can see wind speeds coming up 25 to 40 knots there. A westerly onshore push for southeast, light winds up north, and much stronger flow out here across the western chain with 60 to 80 knot winds developing from the south and west. So our turbulence focus is going to be across western Alaska tomorrow. Considerable moderate there, below 4,000 feet for many from the Yukon Delta northward toward the Kobuk and Nuatak valleys, Norton Sound and Kotzebue Sound communities, including Nome, and the east to western chain, generally below 4,000 feet. But watch out for more chop developing across the west coast as we go. Your marine weather in just a few. Hello again, I'm meteorologist Dave Snider with the National Weather Service for another edition of Alaska Weather Facts. And joining us again, talking about the Augmented Reality Sandbox, is Eric Stevens from GINA, the Geographic Information Network of Alaska. And he's actually talking about a project from AKwx, which is the experimental program to stimulate competitive research. A lot of acronyms, but some really fun stuff today, right, Eric?
You bet. We've got a learning tool that is a tool that's fun to use, and it really has a relevance to actually daily lives of anyone who goes outside and sees lumpy topography in Alaska. We've got a lot of mountains and such. You know, when I was younger and go on your first hike in the hills, say, you're given, maybe you're in the Boy Scouts or you get at the kiosk at the trailhead, a topographic map, a flat piece of paper with all these lines on it, bullseyes, long lines that curve back on themselves, say, perhaps things that look like this. A quadrangle or a topographic map. We've got here just to illustrate a couple of examples near Denali. Alaska has so much topography, so many mountains. And what are all these lines that we see? It can be tough to know what this means the first time you look at it. What we've got, all these lines represent lines of where the elevation of the topography goes through a certain level above sea level, say that this line represents where the mountains have gone from below 1,000 feet, mean sea level, up through 1,000 feet and above. That's your 1,000-foot contour. And when the mountain keeps going up, you're up to 1,200 feet, 1,400 feet, and so on. And that's how you get this little bullseye around the peak of a mountain.
Kind of makes layered slices, right?
Kind of like layered slices. Nice way to look at that. And when you see the lines are closer together, you're going up more steeply. If the mountain rises more slowly, it takes you longer in horizontal space to go through those different vertical increments. So
that is really hard to visualize.
Right. Imagine you're looking at a 2D piece of paper, two-dimensional piece of paper, but you're trying to understand what the three-dimensional world looks like. Well, enter the augmented reality sandbox. Yes, what is that? It is right here. We have the sandbox with us today, Sandbox 2.0, portable version.
Sweet.
Built up at University of Alaska Fairbanks. And we've got a couple of folks helping out today.
Let's see, Alana Valaji, and she's a mechanical engineering student from the University of Alaska Fairbanks. If you want to give us a thumbs up there, Alana, thanks for helping us out today. And Courtney Breest, she's the outreach coordinator from AKwx, also helping us out today. Thanks, Courtney.
And this tool here has a Microsoft Kinect to sense the level of sand in this sandbox. And then the Kinect feeds its information into a computer that then sends a signal to a projector to draw the appropriate topographic lines on this topography. The fun thing about this, as we can see here, is that the sandbox and its Kinect and its projector, they all work as a team. So here we've got a mountain in the middle of the sandbox. What if we took down the mountain to some degree? Watch as the software responds and redraws the topography.
Kind of a caldera forming there.
There you go, And what's fun about the sandbox too is it knows that gravity flows downhill, and we've got some water that's actually down in the lowest elevations. And what's happening now is we're making it rain a little bit. We'll fill up rain into that elevated lake bed, that caldera, as you said. And so now water is pooled up there. And what if you gouged out an outlet channel?
Glacial dam release.
There you go. The water flows out. What we're seeing here is a tool that allows people to touch and connect, Microsoft Connect, RRR, to connect two-dimensional topographic maps like what we have here, these flat things on a piece of paper, to the real three-dimensional world. I think this Sandbox's real particular application as a learning tool to young people is, what does a two-dimensional map mean when it's trying to represent the three-dimensional world? This sandbox is kind of both at once. It's actually three-dimensional, lumpy topography there, the sand, but it's got these lines drawn on the three-dimensional sand that would be on a two-dimensional piece of paper.
Wow, I mean, that is a huge leap from the learning that we experienced when we were younger to how children and even adults are visualizing in these new forms of technology. Allows that to kind of reshape their thinking and visualize this in a very useful and absolutely hands-on way. It's amazing.
It's a hands-on tool, and
it's hard for me to sit here and not go play with that.
Well, that's what happened at Dehne, up at the University of Alaska in Fairbanks, when the first model was being made, the prototype with plywood and such. We had professional adult professor types had heard about this, and they came by because they wanted to see how it worked.
Okay.
And everyone becomes that idealistic, wonder-filled youngster.
Sure.
And you just can't help but play with that, and to see how it reacts in time, and
Right.
It's a dynamic learning tool, and it
Dynamic,
responds.
That's exactly the word.
And you wonder what applicabilities beyond a teaching
Right.
tool for
Where does it
topography
go?
can it have? You can see how in Alaska we have inundation mapping is an issue. If you had water slosh inland, say in a coastal flooding event
Right.
on the western coast of Alaska or the Arctic coast, you could see this. The concept is illustrated here as an introductory learning method. I think this is a potentially good outreach tool for all of us in Alaska.
Okay, so not only just a topographical sense, a mapping sense, maybe something that leads into understanding of how geographic information systems work with GIS, but also geology, if we wanted to get into kind of the formations and the bigger land masses and the representation of the 2D map. We could go into hydrology, which is very important in Alaska, of course. And even just understanding the weather sense. Mounding up a big pile of sand could be that Arctic high pressure system sitting on top of Fairbanks, and the voids would be low pressure systems. This can go a lot of different directions.
Yes, exactly. It's not just landforms, but pressure has contours of high pressure and low pressure. And I wish I had had this kind of a learning tool when I was taking
kidding.
Meteorology 101 back 25 years ago.
Wow.
Would have been helpful, I think.
Probably would have gotten a better grade. Yeah. Okay, thank you so much for coming by, Eric, and Alana and Courtney. Thank you so much for your help there in the sandbox. We are going to play in the sandbox a little bit more coming up tomorrow on our next edition of Alaska Weather Facts. We hope you join us for that. In the meantime, make sure you go to alaska.edu/EPSCOR. That's alaska.edu EPSCOR to learn more information about what we're doing with this augmented reality sandbox around Alaska. We'll see you next time on Alaska Weather Facts.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Time for a look at your sea ice edge across the region in the west. You'll notice not a whole lot of changes from yesterday, but we're just continuing in that same path where we were yesterday. Some marginal ice still hovering around Norton Sound. You can still see a little bit of ice that might be somewhat shore fast just north of Ammonok, between Ammonok and Unalakleet. And then west of Nome, we've got some pack ice here with concentrations above 80%. That's still kind of being pushed westward. The Bering Strait is generally open, but not completely open yet. Certainly not sea ice free, but we're getting there fast. And in Kotzebue Sound, you can see marginal ice there with concentrations under 80%. We're still looking at quite a bit of a higher concentration ice around the Beaufort Sea and really most of the Chukchi Sea at this point. And not entirely sure just yet, but northern parts of Cook Inlet, around Knik Arm anyway, may still have just a little bit of ice left, but we're almost done. You can see this anytime you want at weather.gov/Anchorage/ice, and then zoom in and check out areas that you're particularly concerned about. Check the seasonal outlook as well for the rest of the summer. Here's a look at Thursday's forecast in southeast. Generally light winds and small seas for the inside passage there, only 10 to 15 knots. More of a northwesterly flow from Stevens Passage southward into the Clarence Strait region, and a northwesterly flow across the outer coast, also looking at about 10 to 15 knots, and seas generally around 9 feet there from Yakutat all the way down to the Dixon entrance. Up north, looking at more of a westerly flow, 15 knots on Friday. The winds pick up from Cross Sound southward toward the Dixon entrance, 25 to 30 knots there, 8 to 10 foot seas. And southerlies inside the Lynn Canal, north and westerly winds in the Clarence Strait, 20 knots with 4 foot seas there. Breeze is starting to come up a little bit more from the south as we get into Friday. And as we get into Thursday for Prince William Sound, a southeasterly flow, small seas there, might be a nice day out in the Sound. Southerlies across Cook Inlet, 20 knots with 6 to 7 foot seas, 8 foot seas outside of Resurrection Bay and east of the Barren Islands on a 15-knot wind from the south. For Friday, the winds start to pick up again. You can see slightly higher seas out over the open waters of the Gulf, but more of a southwesterly flow at 25 to 30 knots, 8 to 9 foot seas there. Southeasterlies picking up inside of Prince William Sound on Friday. And southerlies up Cook Inlet, 20 to 25 knots, anywhere from 6 to about 8 foot seas there to wrap up the week. Across the Bristol Bay region, 15 to 25 knot winds with 5 to 7 foot seas expected on Thursday, 15 to 20 across the northern Gulf, anywhere from 10 to 11 foot seas expected there. Southerlies inside of Shelikof Strait could bring 5 foot seas into the region on that 15 knot wind. And by Friday, you'll see the winds picking up more from the south and west. We start to get into your higher end of small crafts there. Winds coming up to 35 knots, in fact, north of Cold Bay, 13 foot seas, and even higher seas coming in from the west. So watch for this as you get into Saturday there. 9 foot seas inside of Bristol Bay and 10 to 11 foot seas across the northern Gulf. Shelikof Strait, you're looking at 10 foot seas on a 25 knot wind. Now across the Aleutians, we're going to see the higher seas still north of the chain, looking at seas ranging from about 12 to 15 foot seas in most areas in the open waters there. Along the chain itself, 8 to 10 foot seas should be the norm, anywhere from 20 to about 30 knot winds coming in from the west and the southwest on Thursday. As we get into Friday, obviously some big changes there with that low pressure system really cranking up here and moving quickly to the east. Anywhere from 35 to 40 knot winds, 16 to 17 foot seas across the North Pacific, 14 to 15 foot seas across the Bering Sea coast, and you can see winds coming up a little bit more from the southwest in Kiska and around Attu. It's 17 to 18 foot seas as we wrap up the week. The west coast, west and southwesterlies coming up the YK Delta and into Norton Sound. For the Pribilofs, 30 knots with 11 foot seas there. Southwesterlies around the St. Matthew Island waters at 10 foot sea there, 7 foot seas in the Kuskokwim Delta. As you get north of Nunivak Island, southerly flow, 25 knots with 8 foot seas, and winds diminish a little bit inside of Norton Sound as we get toward Friday afternoon. Southeasterlies there only bringing 3 foot seas, but you can see those higher seas and waves making their way towards St. Paul and St. George with a 14 foot sea and 35 knot winds from the south. For Thursday up north, southeasterly flow generally light, 10 to 15 knots over the ice, a little bit of a stronger flow around the Bering Strait, southeasterlies off of Kotzebue Sound. More of a southerly flow north of St. Lawrence Island, 25 knots on an 8 foot sea. That diminishes just a little bit on Friday, and we keep more of an easterly flow on the Beaufort. South and easterly flow off the Chukchi coast, 15 to 20 knots for your Friday. That's a look at your marine forecast. Let's recap tonight's weather. Rain across northern and central parts of southeast. Rain and snow showers at times across south central. More likely rain in the lower terrain. Of course, the west coast is really going to get where the cold and the wet weather meet up. So a better chance of snow in the west and lesser amounts of wind for the central and southern parts of Alaska, at least for right now. Thursday, low pressure really digs in out west, 998 millibars there. Sinks southward to 982 on Friday, and rain, wind, and snow develop out in the west once again, and more rainfall for south central and the interior. Thanks for watching.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.